back, and sitting with me now is Brian Field, the man behind the Halifax Plugged-In CD series and concerts. Welcome to Global Noon, Brian.
It's Dennis.
Oh, why do I call you Brian?
I don't know.
Dennis! For heaven's sake, you know what? I know somebody named Brian Field.
Well,
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
This is Dennis Field, folks, not to be confused with Brian
It's
Field.
Denmark Productions, yes.
All right, tell me, first of all, congratulations on
Thank
6
you.
years putting these things together.
It's been a lot of fun doing them.
It's been a lot of work, too, hasn't it?
It is, but it's a labor of love.
A labor of love, so there you go. When you first started 6 years ago with the first CD, did you think that it would continue to create another 5 CDs?
I thought it had the possibilities, and it was always left up to the bands to keep coming back, and once they kept coming, it left open possibilities for all of us to keep the series going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's so important for all the independent acts that are in the city. It gives them a venue, it gives them an opportunity to have their music heard, and it gives them distribution, which is very hard on their own.
Yeah.
It's very tough on their own, and this way they get to showcase the 2 best tunes.
Mm-hmm.
They get to showcase at a big venue, and they get to network a lot, as you mentioned before.
Yes.
There's a lot of network happening between the bands, and they go off and they perform together at other venues together. And that's what it's all about, is creating a community, rather than all the bands working against each other in the battle of the bands and all that kind of things that happen in the city.
So what were your expectations when you first started off?
Well, what it was I was hearing bands come through the studio and a lot of great music coming through, and there was no venue, and the bands couldn't afford a full-length album for whatever reason, and there was good music that's being laying around. So I thought, let's take 10 bands and let's put them on one CD, which is better for even all the public to hear. It's really a great, I mean, we're selling for like $10.
Mm-hmm.
So the public gets to hear 10 great acts for that price, and for the bands it gives them all this exposure. And what I expected was nothing more than to get exposure for the bands. Mm-hmm. And so far it's working.
So the whole philosophy is what?
It's 10 bands working together with Denmark Productions and Velocity Marketing as well. And we work together as a team. Everybody brings their resources together. That way we have all the bands selling the product. So we're all basically networking, and it gains strength that way. It's hard for one band to have and be able to do everything, play and also perform and also get their stuff out to the public.
Mm-hmm. Has your philosophy changed at all in the 6 years you've been putting this together?
None. It's stronger than ever. I get the bands to come into the studio and they stay at Denmark Productions to record the 2 tracks, which is so important because we get continuity through the album. Some compilations, and there's nothing wrong with them, but sometimes you hear different qualities on the album. This way all 10 bands are there, and they're all getting the same shake. And working with me, of course, they all get to put up with me.
They get to put up with you.
That's right.
Well, Dennis, in the 6 years that you've been putting the Halifax Plugged-In CDs together, what has it done for you and Denmark Productions?
It's worked for us as well. What it's done is to give Denmark Productions exposure. It's brought indie bands to me, who I love to do. It's who I really love to do is the independent artists. They're hungry. They have fresh new ideas coming in. There's no corporate people telling them what to do and what not to do. So they don't know they're not supposed to do anything. They just come in with all these fresh ideas. I learned from them also because they're bringing these fresh ideas to me. And I get to put them on the album. They take my guidance, hopefully, and we work together to put out a commercial album for the public.
Right. So how many bands have you worked with in the 6 years with this project?
It's probably between 50 and 55 bands. Some of the bands have come back, done more than one plugged in, and to me that's the highest compliment. They know it worked for them the first time, and they want to do it again because they feel that it really is beneficial to them.
And are there some bands that you've worked with who have gone on to really do extremely well on their own?
Well, it's funny because I'm plugged in one. There was a band called Mother's Cry who is now human.
Oh, yes.
They were on the very
first.
first.
With them today,
That's right. They were on the very first plugged-in CD. So you see the bands create and evolve as the future goes on with them, and it's wonderful to see them just broaden them out. And this year is the first year we're taking Plugged In on the road too, which is kind of fun.
Great. I want to talk about that in just a minute. Now, are all the bands from Halifax, or do you include all Nova Scotia?
All Nova Scotia
bands. Okay.
Yeah, all Nova Scotia. We have them from the Valley, from Truro. We've had them in, and they make the trip up. Eddie's Basement from the Valley bring a bus up with them to the show, full of people from the Valley.
Right.
So they bring their own squad with them. So which is nice.
Yeah. So even though it's called Halifax Plugged In, it's Nova Scotia Plugged In.
It's Nova Scotia Plugged In. Yes.
But are you getting a response from outside of Nova Scotia from people?
Well, this year we went and had some national distribution of the album, and it's amazing what's happening in Ontario. I'm getting emails from bands in Ontario. asking how do they get on it, how can it happen in Ontario for those bands, because it's beneficial and they see it, what's happening. So it's amazing the response that we are getting now that we've started to get some more national distribution for the project.
Okay, so let's talk about your plans for the future then. Are you going to maybe expand a little bit outside of Nova Scotia?
Yeah, we're hoping to get more of an Atlantic region.
Okay.
I'd like to see bands come in from New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island come in because I think it's going to add to the pool and also give us more resources into those provinces. Again, still pushing the same thing that indie music is so important because it is where it all begins. It's where all our great talent starts, is right at the bottom, and all these artists get to come through the studio, get to see how the studio works, get to see how Marina does her wonderful work at Velocity, at marketing this project, and right through to the release show, how a professional release show is put on. Right,
super. So tell us about the bands on this year's CD compilation. There's 10 bands?
There's 10 bands.
Every CD, every year
CD's had 10 bands, except for the first one, I think had 8.
Okay.
We were testing the waters, basically, on the first one to see what we could do and what we couldn't do.
10's the magic number, right?
And 10 seems to work. All the bands get 8 minutes on the CD, so there's 2 songs on there, so there's guidelines for them, hence the CD can have 80 minutes on it. And all the bands, I would say, they get out of it what they put into it. The more, and it's not monetary, it's really, energy-wise, what they put into the project, they will gain the results from it.
Right, super. So, when will you start on next year's CD?
We've started.
You've started already?
We start immediately after the release show, which was May the 11th. We start immediately taking band names, and people say, how do you go through the process? I just collect bands' names, bands that are coming through the studio, they sign up, and by mid to late August, early September, we start narrowing the list down. And it's not narrowing it down on just the musical quality, if they think they're going to get something out of the project. I don't want them on if they think, oh, we don't think it's not for us, and it's not for them. And we make sure everybody's going to be happy at the end of it.
Very good. So, very quickly, what are the bands on this year's CD?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot now.
Oh, no.
There's One Lady Driver, there's Eddie's Basement. Yeah, there's the list.
Look.
There's
There
the
you
list.
go.
One Lady Drivers, there's Carpe Diem, Eddie's Basement, Feather Plane, Hurt the Lion, of course, which you have here. Inversions is our underage act that we had on this year. And they did a great job. Obscura, Strong Hollow, and the Fantods as well.
The Fantods. I love the names, too.
Aren't they wonderful?
Oh, they're absolutely great, I'll tell you. Dennis Field.
That's me. That's me.
Really nice to have you in today.
Thank you so kindly.
And I'm so sorry I got you confused with the other Field named Brian.
That's all right. As long as you put the CD up, we're happy.
All right. Thanks so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Keep on rocking, hey?
Thank you.
Okay. Dennis Field and his Denmark Productions is the man behind the Halifax Plugged In CD series. For more information, go to denmarkproductions.com. Coming up, the scoop on this weekend's Big Blue Nose Marathon in Halifax.